dominance, influence, manipulation, influencers, talking, doing. What do these all have in common? Different forms of power, different forms of action, and more importantly, split between two different powers. Power is something that we all have. However, it comes in different forms. And what's not talked about all that much is how power differs between the genders. Welcome to the Glass Floor. This is a podcast sponsored by NCFM, the National Coalition for Men, which was founded in 1977. They're a nonpartisan, diverse group that is inclusive, and they fight against discrimination towards men, boys, and the families that love them. And this is our podcast about gender equalism and trying to equal the scales and discussing different men's issues, not only solutions and issues, but also how it looks on each side. As you'll see in our graphic, we basically talk about the fact that some men are on the bottom, creating the glass floor, which the women of our society walk upon, sometimes unnoticed.
Yep.
In this episode, we're talking about female power. My name is Katrina Overfield. This is my co-host, Tim Goldich, and welcome.
Thanks, Katrina. Yes, here we are. We're here to talk about something no one talks about, female power. I'm not saying that female power is greater than male power. I'm just saying that we know what male power is, but we really don't know what female power is. If you ask someone, what's female power, they'll probably answer something to the effect of female senators and CEOs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are women that just happen to be wielding a high-end form of male power. And female power remains really elusive, and it's like there's two things in gender we don't talk about. We don't talk about male victimization. Nobody wants to talk about male victimization because squirm in our seats to look at that. And nobody wants to look at female power either. But women have their own particular modes of power, which they exert through their own particular channels. And I rebrand those. Any kind of power that women wield more of, we'll call it a female mode of power. And I write it like that to kind of rebrand it, to kind of take a new look at it, what it is and what it's comprised of. First off, we may ask, since there is so much denial about female power, does female power exist? Does it even exist at all?
Mm-hmm.
In some circles, some would say no. All right. Well, look at it this way. In the realms of gender conflict and complaint, gender advocacy and activism, right? Gender ideology, gender issues, gender studies, gender politics, gender anything. We have feminism on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's kind of like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a powerless people take such total dominance over the belief system like that? Clearly, women have some form of power in order to be able to do that. And we'll talk about those modes of power. All right, first thing to take a look at, though, is three good reasons why we should look at female power. Why should we know what this is? How would it benefit us, society? Well, one, so it's a vital re-understanding of woman, not as powerless pawn under patriarchy, but rather as equal partner in the human system, who ultimately exerts an equal overall force of influence in the human system and is thus equally responsible for outcomes. So I think it's a huge Psychological. I think it's just terrible. Feminism has convinced women that their legacy is nothing more than property and chattel.
Mhm.
It's absolutely false, and it can only be very detrimental to women,
Mhm.
emotionally, spiritually, psychologically.
And it's very untrue in a lot of ways because
Oh yeah,
it's minimizing that role and that ability to
yeah.
bring kids and raise them and
That's huge. That's huge. We're going to look at 14 modes of female power eventually. Yeah, uh, but motherhood power is enormous.
Mhm.
But there are well, like I say, 14 modes of female power.
and that's probably not even the full list, to be honest.
No, that's probably not. Okay, number two. So understanding female power leads to respecting
Mhm.
women, right? How deeply are you going to respect the biggest victim? Really, you know? Yeah, in the world of men, when men start complaining and saying, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, and outside of gender political realms, men just slap those guys down. They say, quit your bitching,
Mhm.
which means quit complaining the way women do. It's beneath a man to be complaining like that. Well, you can judge it, women the same way, you know. Um, if women are really to be respected, how can you really revere woman going on about how she is the victim of all things,
Mhm.
especially when you come to understand uh, that men also suffer, that both sexes suffer each their own particular version of the human condition. So it doesn't, it women apply a lot of power
Mhm.
through victim, but I don't think women get what they really want most, which is the
The
respect.
respect.
Yeah.
I would say to the most part, the victimization really is more a sympathy kind of.
Yeah.
I don't want to compare it to this, but last week we did talk about Munchausen
Right.
syndrome and how that's caused a lot of times from seeking sympathy and seeking empathy and that kind of attention.
Yeah.
And of course, there are actual victims and they should speak up and, those issues need to be addressed and
Yeah.
things need to be changed.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there are no victims, there are, but the
Right.
victimization mindset,
Yeah.
not actually being a
See what
victim.
she said there. See that? Yeah.
Um, the mindset where you're constantly a victim just because you were born a woman or just because,
Or just
uh,
because you were born a man.
just because you were born a man really seems to just be because of a lack of empathy in their life. They want to feel that sympathy and
Yeah.
empathy for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
More so the sympathy than the empathy. Empathy is more like truly deeply feeling it. Sympathy is just to get the thrill,
Yeah.
if you will.
Right. My distinction between the two is to empathize is to put oneself in the other person's place and feel what they feel. And sympathy, though, is more like poor thing.
Yeah.
It's more like, oh, you poor thing. And it's better directed toward children than adults.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, number three. Okay, yeah. Well, see, as long as his female modes of power remain sort of invisible to us, then all fault is male. We will blame men for everything.
Yeah.
And it leads right to man bad, the overempowered oppressor, woman good, the innocent victim. And while that belief system targets men, makes men bad, but the fallout is endemic. Everyone suffers it. Women suffer it too.
Mm.
Women suffer the infantilizing effects
Yeah.
of it.
And what's interesting about it too is the fact that, at least from my perspective, because there's been so many studies that say that the male brain develops much slower than the female brain.
From early on, you
Yeah,
mean?
they
Yeah.
mature a lot later on in life.
Yes.
And yet, still, when you see these stories, and that's not saying that that means they should do what they do when they don't do something great, but when you see these stories where they're like, oh, she didn't know what she was doing and this and that about like a girl who lied about her age or something and the guy was in prison, he should have known better. And I'm just sort of sitting here like, so let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You have scientific studies, which you post all the time,
Yeah.
that say, oh, men develop less quickly than women
Right.
mentally.
Yeah.
But so by that context, supposedly, and I realize that doesn't equal maturity always, because maturity really depends on how you're raised and ethics and other things. But on a general concept, that does mean that they're at least a bit ahead in their understanding of the world,
You would think.
you would think, which means
Yeah.
that they really did know what they were
Right.
doing
So they're really less innocent than,
than you're perceiving them. But it's just
yeah,
because,
or that
oh,
they're presenting
small Q.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a complicated thing that about maturity. The theory goes that the female of the species is there's a an accelerated maturation in order for the female to give birth as quickly as possible,
Mhm.
have babies as quickly as possible. Why? Well, that's really complicated, but that has to do with hominin evolution and the difficulty that hominins would have had to maintain their numbers. Most any four-legged creature would run them down easy. When the hominins came down from the trees and started walking full time, the hips got narrow.
Mhm.
Um, the infants had to be birthed prematurely. Infant mortality was very high. And you could only have one or two offspring at a time,
Yeah.
two at the most, really basically just one at a time. So the theory goes that one of Mother Nature's strategies, if you can call it that, I don't know. I mean, there's really no strategy involved. It's all a mechanism. The genetics is all just a mechanism, but the mechanism selected for young hominin females to accelerate their maturation so that they could be having infants as quickly as possible
Mhm.
for the tribe to maintain its numbers.
Yeah.
That's the theory. Now, maturity, what does that mean? So there's lots of different ways of looking at maturity. So little boys are out there, they're playing sports, they're playing games, and what do? They set rules, and they're very focused on these rules. So
Mhm.
perhaps the boys mature more quickly in terms of developing a sense of fairness,
Mhm.
ethic, sportsmanship, you know. So lots of ways of looking at it. Don't want to take all the heat for because a lot of men get very uptight over this idea that the girls mature more quickly.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they should get uptight more about that the boys are failing to such a degree in the early curriculum,
Mhm.
the preschool, uh, kindergarten, and first grade. The boys are getting killed,
Mhm.
and that's really what we should be looking at.
Not literal killed.
No, not literally, no, no, but
Academically.
yeah, yeah, it's bad. Yeah, I mean, it sets a lot of young little boys on a downward spiral
Mhm.
academically that some never recover from. You see,
Yeah.
so the boys would catch up with the girls, but not if they're so sabotaged that they,
Mhm. And
never.
it's because they're not used to their energy and attention spans and other things. I mean, I know my brother and I are very different. I mean, not that I wasn't a wild kid, I'm not gonna lie about that, but I could sit down with my homework a lot easier than he could. Like, my parents could
Yeah,
sit me down and I get it done. Him, I remember I'd have to sit him at his tiny desk, make sure there was absolutely nothing nearby him because he'd find any excuse in the world. and just sit there for like 2 hours making do his work because he just wanted to run around and everything.
Yeah.
Even as like teenagers. Granted, he's my mom's kid, definitely, because he has all her sass now as a 17-year-old.
Oh.
But, I can see the difference of like the guys in the group, the girls in the group.
Yeah. So
Girls
how?
were like a lot more prepared, a lot more knowing
Oh
what they're
yeah.
doing. Some of the guys know what they're doing for college, some of them don't.
Right.
And they a lot of video games, a lot of joking around about random stuff I will not say on here because that is some hard card rides. And then girls are just like, this is step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 25 of life plan. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. Right. Right. Well, arguably they're advantaged in that. You go girl and so on,
Yeah.
and the boys maybe just don't get any encouragement. But yeah, whatever this maturation is, clearly in terms of schoolwork, in terms of academics, in the early curricula,
Mm.
women are advantaged. And you see, we used to, preschool and kindergarten and first grade, they used to just be play with blocks and be told stories. You didn't try and get these boys to read and write yet, Everything was kind of slowed at the early curricula to keep things more balanced between the boys and girls,
Mm.
but not anymore. Not anymore. All right. Let's see. What else should we look at? Yeah, feminism. Well, a lot of feminism springs from the whole idea that women are powerless,
Mm.
and therefore feminism is needed as a corrective. But we're going to take a look at that and see if that's depends on how you look at it. There's this all this female power that we don't recognize. All right, so I've covered 3 good reasons to take a look at female power. There's
Mm.
doubtless more, but that kind of covers why this is such an important thing to look at.
Yeah.
All right. So what is here? Oh, so then another thing to look at is this word matriarchy.
Mm.
Yeah, so there's nothing really wrong with it, but it ends up being kind of deceptive because it's the same word as patriarchy, and
But turned
therefore,
around.
yeah, it's just got a different suffix. So it looks like the same thing, and so it tends to cause us to look for the same thing. So it has us looking for those female senators and CEOs
Yeah.
and thinking that's matriarchy. And all we see then is that women seem to have less power than men. Well, women do have less power than men. They have less male power,
Mm.
but they have more female power.
Mm.
So that's, again, where we're headed here. All right. And we covered some of this in previous podcasts.
Yep.
Ah,
If you don't know, click off now and go watch the others.
yeah. Well, anything else here that I really need? No, I covered that stuff too. All right, it's time. The 14 modes of female power. All right. 1, sexual leverage power.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So here's the thing. Uh, many of these modes of female power, these are not what feminists would want to define as power. But they are powers that men must contend with. They
Mm.
are powers toward which men are extremely vulnerable. And they are powers that, in their own way, do much to mold our human world.
Mm.
So feminists may want to dismiss this sexual power as meaningless, but arguably, you see, as seen from a politicized male perspective, these subjective forms of female power, well, as seen from a politicized male perspective, this so-called patriarchy is nothing more than men everywhere set in fierce competition in their efforts to perform, achieve, and succeed their way into having what women are empowered to demand of them.
Mhm.
And much of this is sexual and beauty power.
I was gonna say, well, say and ask if beauty and sex were separate categories on the list or if they're
I
the
did
same
make them
one.
separate, but
Okay.
they certainly overlap, and they're certainly, but I did place them as separate
Oh.
because beauty power is the power to beguile and open doors
Mhm.
and there's also this element of what's known as the halo effect,
Mhm.
a presumed innocence that goes with beauty. So the sexual power, yeah, that's
There's not much to say there. It's
right.
biology, it's a sex appeal, it's
Yeah, there's
you see
one.
someone, they're good looking, you want to be
They're
with
hot.
them. They're
Yeah,
hot. They're hot
yeah.
tamale.
Yeah, yeah. Geez, there's so much denial around it now, but back in my day, sex with a beautiful girl was just about the greatest ecstasy this earthly reality had to offer.
Mm,
And, we would talk about, one guy would say to the other, oh, she'd be worth 3 fingers. What do you mean by that? That's the number of fingers I'd cut off if I could get in bed with her. And then they go, ha, 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 men just make jokes of everything. But it's not all that far from true. The allure of a beautiful young woman is immense.
mm,
And here's another thing about it. It's often the sexual power is often a conduit to what might be an even deeper power, and that is an emotional intimacy power. You see, it's everything's changing a little bit, but historically, men were really not able to get any of their emotional needs from other men. You really could not get any depth of companionship,
mhm,
any real depth of emotional or physical intimacy. Uh, you could not get really connection. See, so what can happen is that a woman can provide this emotional intimacy, excuse me, that perhaps the man has never experienced anywhere else.
mm.
And he may cling to that as a kind of emotional lifeline, you see. And needless to say, the woman with the other end of that lifeline wields a lot of power.
Mhm.
All right. Yeah,
It's where the saying, "Got him around my finger,
wrap around the finger.
wrap
Yeah.
around the finger."
Yeah. Right. And see, nobody wants to look at female power. Men are very offended. There's men out there right now that go, well, they don't have any effect on me. They can't do that to me. By God,
Well, it
I'm
also seems
big
to
and
go
strong.
unnoticed because it's more of an emotion than it is like when
Yeah.
people think of power, they think of like
Right.
strength, dominance. Oops, sorry, table.
That's
But
right. They think of male power.
yeah, physical power too,
Yes.
like a lot of strength. They don't really think about the powers of influence, of emotion, because emotion's a
Yeah.
huge. I mean, that's
It's huge.
if any of you have ever taken a film theory class, I mean, one of the things they go into is how the emotion of actors
Yeah.
and the settings and that you use in terms of like the film and the way you angle the camera, how all of that adds that feeling that gives the
It has that
film its
impact.
greatness, that impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. All of it contributes in subtle ways. So, so women wield a lot of power through this emotional power.
Mm.
We already talked about beauty power, presumed innocence, moral authority. Um, and again, a lot of people out there will roll their eyes about female moral authority, but um, when woman says that, how do I put this? Feminism is based a lot on female moral authority.
Mm.
It's women telling us right from wrong. This goes all the way back to like the Roman era when we had the Vestal Virgins who got a box seat there at the Colosseum and the other
Mm.
to watch mostly men getting slaughtered and cut up, like and these women that were supposedly the moral center of Rome got the box seats for this. Okay.
Wasn't the
But
rule that like they were the only women allowed? I think because women in general aren't
well,
usually allowed.
here's how it is according to my research.
Uh-oh.
The women were relegated to the cheap seats.
Mm.
But they were there in huge numbers, maybe even outnumbering the men. There's some little indicators that might be true. The Vestal virgins got these special box seats
Because they were the best virgins.
because they were the Vestal virgins, and I would assume that the male senators and such, they also got primo seats too.
Mm. Oh.
Yeah, so the women had to suffer the cheap seats, but on the upside, they had a vastly lower odds of ever ending up in the arena.
On accident.
Very much less odds of ending up in the arena. Oh, let's see. Yeah, moral authority. Um, that's kind of the power that a 110-pound woman wields when she gets up in the face of a 210-pound man
Mm.
and chews him out for being wrong.
Mm.
So 110-pound man would
Yeah.
ever get up in the face of a 210-pound other man.
Yeah.
Um,
Women.
Not
We
unless he
were
wants to get
like,
killed. Not unless he wants to get.
I'm sorry, you said moral power. The first thing my mind went to was chancla.
What's that?
The chancla.
Yeah.
We all joke around about having a sandal that you were beat with
Uh,
growing up.
uh,
Like chancla, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Only the mother wields the power.
uh-huh.
The father's only physical power is a cinturón. The mother can pull anything else. Spoon, chancla, this, that.
Uh-huh.
Every culture's got like their own version of it, whatever the name is.
Yeah. Yeah. Think of the nuns in Catholic school too.
Yeah. Oh, the ruler.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
There's your moral authority.
Yeah. Yeah. Wielding it in that sense, like,
Yeah.
I'm the female here. I have the moral authority.
Yeah. That sense they can give you one look and you know to shut up really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, that's not right.
Yeah. Another thing. So presumed innocence.
Mm-hmm.
That's big, especially in a court of law.
Yeah.
So that's what, at least partially, accounts for why men suffer a 63% longer average prison sentence for the same crime.
Yeah.
And it's why women are far more likely to just be let off on probation.
Mm. And why in family courts too, not all the time, but like a good amount of times, like the kids end up staying with the mother. And I realize that's
Yeah.
situational. Each family situation's different, but there's been so many stories of women who try to make false accusations and other things to try to win their kids in courts, and they get away with it.
Yeah, and oftentimes they get away with it because they're presumed innocent.
Listen, yeah. It has to have happened.
Yes. Number 4, majority vote power. So, of course, that hasn't applied historically, but currently, women do have the majority vote. It's because there are more women than men. Um, and but it's more than that because it's women appearing to have a solidarity,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's this: if you offend one woman, you offend all women, and so there's a certain walking on eggshells around that, and politicians definitely fear that female vote, that female judgment. Number 5, net worth power.
Yeah.
Because women more often end up with the home
Mm-hmm.
and the income. Women end up with about 140% of the net worth
Yeah.
that men have.
After what's the saying? After divorce, they get the
Yeah, it's as heads of household, so that is after divorce, right?
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, even married though, I mean, I don't know about anybody else. Seems in our household the rule is my mom's money is my mom's money, my brother's money is my brother's money, my dad's money is everybody's money. And for some reason recently my money's become everybody's money. But that's a unique situation. But the dad's
You're
money is
liberated. You see,
everybody's
you're
money.
so liberated. That's what it.
But the father's money is everybody's money.
Dad's money is everybody's money. Yeah. Spending power. Number 6.
To the point. Dad's money is
Exactly.
everybody's money.
Yeah, for people that for women having unpaid labor, funny how they dominate consumer spending in virtually every category.
Yep.
For every dollar a man spends, a woman spends $1.40.
To that point, I would like to point out though, the expense to be a woman is very expensive.
Uh-huh.
I would just like to point that out. Between hair products, nails, and stuff, this is like $50 alone on just my hands.
Really?
For
Yeah, the
gel.
beauty industry is
Yeah.
unbelievably huge. It's
For gel.
many, many billions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another point to make about it is that much of what women spend, they spend on the household.
Sure. That is valid.
But the thing is, though, regardless if the manufacturers and the advertisers know that it's women that are out there buying and spending, if they know that most of their consumer group is female, they're going to cater to the female. So you see all these commercials with the doofus dad,
Yeah.
and the wise mother and wife.
Yeah.
And also, and this is a little less relevant now than it was back, even 10, 20 years ago, but all of television will tend to cater to women.
That's true.
Because women are the primary watchers of the television, and because women are the primary consumers.
Yeah.
That the advertisers are.
Well, they have more things to watch. The
Yes,
shows,
nowadays there's
telenovelas,
more.
everything, and watch football. Not that that's the only thing they watch, but like it's like sports.
Yeah.
Maybe some other things in between, the news.
Yeah. Right.
And then there's women's talk show, women cook show, telenovela 1, telenovela 2.
Yes, that's right. That's right. The Spanish or the Mexican soap operas and the soap operas in general, and
Yep.
yeah, daytime TV.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would also like to point. I think another reason too, it's also maybe the consumers. On top of the fact that women's clothes is also more expensive, I found that out. And this is, I do still shop in the women's section, obviously, but when it comes to workout stuff, first of all, the fact that half of women's workout stuff doesn't have pockets is irritating. And the fact that those leggings, I swear, Lululemon's like a steal, or not steal, they're robbing you blind.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, like $35, $38 for like a pair of leggings over there without
No.
pockets.
Yeah. I don't
And
know.
you can buy shorts in the men's section at Target for like $15 that have pockets.
Yeah.
They'll work out just as well for your workout. It's like,
Well, okay. But this whole thing about gender-based pricing
yeah,
is mostly pretty bogus. Okay, so it's like yeah, of course, women's shoes cost more. They come in about 500 different colors and textures and styles. And if they're stiletto heels, they're made from titanium.
yeah.
And the men, black, white, brown, that's it. And they're mass produced for conformity, and
Yeah.
they're for working in.
That's true. Not gonna lie about that.
So yeah.
Also, women tend to do all the like, not always, but I feel like when it comes to parties and like setting up kid play dates and other things, that's usually more in the women field of things. And so they're the ones being like, oh, it's cousin Jarek's party next week. We have to buy him a gift. Do we really? Yeah, they go to the store, Target, get a whole thing.
Yeah.
They get the Christmas presents and everything.
But it's not just the cheap junk. My understanding is that women have surpassed men in terms of new car sales.
Yeah.
So, It's
Because they keep breaking their cars. Sorry, that's a terrible point. You do
what?
not all keep breaking your cars. Though
Oh,
I will say that the amount of times I've driven and it just happens to be a woman behind the wheel that speeds up over the pothole that you can clearly see.
yeah,
I don't know if you think you're gonna jump over it.
yeah.
It's
If I speed up
astounding.
fast enough, I'll jump right over that thing.
It's astounding. I'm just like, no wonder your muffler's broken.
All right, number 7, procreation power.
Yeah.
So that's power of choice. That's a choose between abortion, adoption, child drop-off centers,
Mm-hmm.
or sue for child payments. And whatever her
Yeah.
choice is largely his fate. Unless he's going to run to Canada, he's going to have to pay. Uh, okay, here's an important point to make here. See, unlike male modes of power, which are largely centralized,
Mm-hmm.
so that's like paycheck power and status, it's titles, it's
Mm-hmm.
and most of that is centralized.
Sort of in a similar realm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Women power is.
female power is right. It's more diverse and it's more evenly distributed. So, like motherhood power is more evenly distributed among women in general. This procreation power, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing basically, but it's more evenly distributed among women in general.
Mm-hmm.
Moral authority, these kinds of things. So, can we get the image of the? Yes.
Butter.
So it's obvious that there's the same amount of butter on each of these pieces of bread. And if butter was power, we'd see that the power comes out even. And the next slide. Nope, not that one. There it is. This is more like how it is with male and female, where the male power, oh, I get to use my pointer. Uh, the male power is more centralized.
Yeah.
It's some men just have this ridiculous outsized power, this just way over the top power. But let me get the pyramid back for a sec. But this is where huge numbers of men are, and they got no power at all. They don't have sexual power. They don't have moral authority. They don't elicit more empathy.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, the male moral authority is also very different, and probably for
Yeah,
another episode. But
that's right. I think it is because that
it's
is a
very
different
different.
thing because definitely men throughout history have had a certain their own form of moral authority.
Yeah.
But going back to the bread and the butter, yeah. So one way of looking at it is that female power is spread thinner but wider. And you see, if you're walking around on this piece of bread and you're looking for female power, all you'll find is a kind of a thin layer everywhere you look. Right?
Mm.
But nevertheless, it really comes out even. So I say anyhow.
Yeah.
That's what
Well, I
gender
mean, we
equalism
haven't even
says.
finished the list, and the categories are already sort of like procreations over here and being able to create kids. Then you go all the way over here, and it's more like presumed innocence and how people view you. And then you go over here, and it's sort of connected, but not quite. And it's like beauty and sex power,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and then emotional, which is like somewhere here. So it's already pretty
Yeah.
spread out, and just the
It's
points we've
right,
had so far.
right. So right. So the point is that as a matter of
They
degree,
have the
as a
connection, but they're
matter of
not.
degree, female power is spread
Yeah,
a bit more
widely.
widely. Yeah. Here's another one do I want to do anything more with this? Well, this includes motherhood power, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh, so you didn't put motherhood power as a separate point?
No,
Okay.
I chose to put that in with procreation power.
Okay, if that's the case, then my point to this is back to the moral point.
Yeah.
Mothers are usually the closest with the child in the early years,
Yeah.
more likely than the father is. So they sort of set those first steps,
Yeah.
that first connection, those first morals and rules.
Yeah.
And so it's like that is the base that kid is starting at before leading the rest of their life.
That's right. So that's why they say the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been taken very seriously in some circles. I forget which is the philosopher that said, it's an ancient one. What? Something to the effect that mothers, if you change the mothers, you change the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mothers are forming, they're socializing the young from right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that leads then to Lloyd DeMause in his theory, where he says that the evolution of human parenting has been the evolution of human empathy.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the evolution of human mental health,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence.
Social expectations in a way.
Yeah, social consciousness.
Because as social norms change, so did the way of raising kids. I mean, in
Well,
the
and as the
20s, you would leave your kid with your nanny.
and the inverse, as female parenting changed,
Mm-hmm.
it changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, though they're unsung heroes, that it's in the world of men, there was an evolution of human technology, science, and that was spearheaded by exceptional males,
Yeah.
like some early agriculturalists. They've been making the hoe in this way, this particular shape, for 1,000 years, and some clever man goes, well, why don't you shape it like this, and then it'll be more efficient. And
Yeah.
oh, okay. And it's kind of like that. Some particular male kind of saw outside his world
Mm-hmm.
to something better.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout history, there have been these mothers that parented better than they themselves were parented.
Mm-hmm.
And that has driven the evolution of human parenting.
Yeah. Or they influence somebody else to write. I mean, Dr. Spock
Well,
was
Dr.
pretty
Spock, yeah, of course, that's a
top,
man influencing these things, yes.
but he probably got that influence from his mother, either from what she did or didn't do, wrote that book that influenced some
Yeah,
mothers, and they started seeing, oh, well, I'm not sure I agree with this or that or this, and then that influenced the next, and da da da
right,
da 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 da.
right. Dr. Spock goes back to the early 60s and the 50s, and that was a time when men dominated everything.
Yeah.
So women manipulated everything, but we didn't know that. We didn't understand that. But we'll get to that. So this motherhood power is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, any of these modes of power I'm talking about, they're worthy of book length treatments. I'm just buzzing through them so fast because you got to move this stuff along. But yeah, and some will start screaming that what I said is that women have evolved human empathy, and what many will hear is women are more empathic. Well, no, that's not what I said. What I said is what I said, that because women have been the parents
Mm-hmm.
and have the primary parents, and they have socialized the young, women, mothers, are primarily to be credited with the evolution of that.
Mm-hmm.
And just as women have been always more involved with the evolution of technology and mathematics and science than they're given credit for, Likewise, there have been more men that have evolved to help to, bring up the standards of parenting than they get credit for.
Mm.
But just the same, you know, the technology is large. That's mostly a male territory, and parenting is mostly a
Mostly in
female
female
territory,
territory.
Okay. Domestic power.
You,
So that's like the greater power to rule the roost and sort of set the social calendar. And it's also the social fabric.
mm-hmm.
Women basically weave the social fabric.
Oh yeah.
If women don't do their job, the social fabric just falls apart. Um, it's definitely within the realm of the world of women and female power and female force of influence.
Yeah. And the influence of like the house too. It's clean and what kind of standards to live and other
Yeah,
things. And
yeah,
the first thing that comes to my mind is, I mean, other than Kim K in terms of social fabric, Kim Kardashian, for anyone who didn't
yeah.
know what the case
Martha
is.
Stewart from way back. Yeah.
Martha Stewart way back. Because you hear about her all the time, and there are so many Kim K's in the world,
Uh
it
huh.
feels like now on TikTok.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing with TradCons coming up and running, I know some of you are gonna call me that out there,
We'll all be
but
called tradcoms. Well, and we'll also all be called radicals too.
yeah,
There's all people out there that are going that that Katrina Overfield. She's so radical. It's ridiculous.
honestly. But there's one that's becoming sort of popular. I don't know if I'd call her TradCon. I can see why they say it because she's her name's Nara Smith, I believe. Yeah, Nara Smith, TikToker.
Uh
Most of her TikToks, she's a stay-at-home mom and wife, and she's like cooking and baking
huh. Uh
bread and
huh.
how do I cradle and how I decorate the room and
Uh huh.
stuff. And people are like, it's funny because she gets a lot of like people are like, oh, TrideCon, and then you got other people who are like fantasizing her life. They're like, I want that because it's
Yeah.
it's stability and it's she gets to set the social stuff. She wears these expensive dresses and people try to search for them, and I'm like, I'm not talking like $100. I'm
Wow.
talking like 300 plus.
Uh
She
huh.
just wears them while baking, and there are people trying to dress like her now and then do their hair
Yeah.
and
See,
stuff.
well, she's appealing though, like women have for millennia. You know, most girls they grow up playing with dolls, playing house. They play princess. They help mom change diapers if they're old enough. They may go out babysitting. There's the Mr. Culture does not
Mm,
do everything.
yeah.
There's a biological element to all these things, and I wouldn't claim to know. It's mysterious. What is biology and what is socialization, and what's the synergistic relationship between the two? It's complicated, and I think there's more to learn about in that. But to say that male and female are strictly social constructs is false.
Yeah.
It's just false. It's just false. I don't know what the mix is. I don't know how it all works necessarily, but clearly biology has its force of influence in the system. In
Yeah,
the
I would say male and female biologically, it is what it is.
Yeah.
What you identify and how you feel is a little different because that's sort of like a inner thing. And I think that's where it gets complicated because when you think of man and woman, you think of the biological
Well,
and
there's the
not,
sex,
yeah,
and that's objective.
yeah. And
Le-
there's the gender,
And
and
then there's the
that's,
gender, and that's what everyone's debating.
yeah,
And feminism says that gender is strictly a social construct, and many MRAs also have become averse to biology. But uh, in my judgment, and from my study, there's no way. There are biological aspects. When this woman you're talking about,
narcissism.
she starts going on about domestic things, and she draws a crowd of women.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just Mr. Culture that creates that. It's also something innate.
Mm.
And I don't know what it is, but we're learning more and more about how genetics define us. It's incredible. I mean, it first started with these identical twins born apart
Mhm.
and finding out how incredibly similar they were.
Regardless of being separated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much is genetic? And well, that's another thing. That's a whole other,
That's a
that's
whole
another
different
rabbit
thing.
hole to go down.
Yeah. I will say to the point though, Nara Smith and Kim K. I think between the past and the future, social construct has changed a lot and social norms and stuff. Because I feel like back in the day, it was like you had your ongoing other social influences, but there was like one really base strong one. Like Marilyn Monroe was Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And there were some other people,
And she was
but it was
hot.
mainly everybody was focused on Marilyn Monroe, and she was like the big influence. And there's a few small people
Yeah.
here and there, but for the most part, everyone tried to embody that.
Yeah.
And then,
Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable. To me, those are the two most archetypal
yeah,
humans ever. She just is the absolute female archetype, and he the absolute male archetype.
mhm, yeah. But nowadays, it feels like it's sort of all over the place because we're in this generation, and it's like you got people like Nara Smith, who are more traditional conservatives,
Uh-huh.
and they got their influence group. You got the mini Kim K's. You have the people who want to look like I'm not on TikTok enough, guys. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah, I
but
don't know these people at all, so.
but like sort of these Y2K bring it back kind of people. It's like you
uh,
have all these different social circles now there
Uh-huh.
than there was before. It sort of seemed more uniform back then.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's like boom, 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 boom. Social, like
Yeah.
we're hailing Kim Kardashian,
I
we're
know.
hailing Nora
I
Smith, we're
call it a
hailing,
chaos of opinion out there.
yeah, it really is.
It really is. All right. The one last thing to say about domestic power, it doesn't hold as true now, but one of those powers was power of choice
Yeah.
to work full time, to work part time, to work what some volunteer work,
Mm-hmm.
and then what the MRA's joke is, our the male, his three options are uh, work full time, work overtime, work two jobs.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in today's society, we're a little too broke for that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people who can pull it off, but
Oh yeah. I mean, it still exists.
it's very
It's
rare.
just a matter of degree.
Yeah.
It's faded out because yeah, most everybody needs the two incomes now.
Yeah, economical stuff.
Yeah. Number 9, the greater power to elicit empathy. This is huge. So this is the power that raises only female concerns to the level of major societal concerns.
Mm.
Men simply do not elicit the empathy. So you can have the fact that men comprise 92% of all work-related fatalities, but you can't get anybody to care. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Even that men are 4.5 times as likely to commit suicide. People everywhere sort of go, so what? Men just don't elicit the empathy.
Mm.
So you have your American Suicide Prevention Association
Yeah.
and try to get them to talk about male suicide. Just try. Just try and get them to focus on male suicide. They won't do it. I know.
That's
I've tried.
unfair.
You
Yeah.
know.
That's a little it's terrible. It shouldn't happen. And it should be more talked about.
Yeah.
I will say Australia. It's unfortunate though because they had to reach such a point to it, but they do a pretty good job in Australia of
Do they?
addressing that. But it's because their suicide rate's just
It's,
gone so
oh
high.
yeah.
So it's gotten to
So
the point where they
eventually you
so
can't
yeah.
ignore it anymore.
But yeah, they shouldn't be doing it. But unfortunately, it does seem that women always will listen more. And even with health issues too and stuff. I mean, we were talking in the health episode. It's like I realize prostate cancer comes much later in men
Yeah.
usually, but we're starting to see some men get younger, and it's just, and then there's other kinds of cancers and health issues men more likely have that aren't just cancer, but issues with blood clots and with
Yeah.
diabetes and other things. Those
Sure.
don't get as much attention either, health
Right.
wise.
Right. Yeah. Men's health is relatively
I mean, even just if
ignored.
you read an article about when somebody dies or murders or something, women get names and like years, dates, whatever not. Sometimes they just say 15 men died.
Right.
That's it. 10 women died. There's a list of the women. 15
Yeah.
men died. 15 dudes died.
Or even worse, when NPR goes, 50 people died, including 10 women.
Yeah.
What does
The
that tell you?
specification of the
Yeah.
women.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll say most of the victims were women and children.
Mm-hmm.
But if you added up the men and children, you'd find that most of the victims were men and children. So that's like a trick, and that's like a blatant trick to focus the empathy on women.
I would say the most blatant trick is just the military. So much of our military is male.
Yeah.
So many of our veterans are male. How many of them do we talk about when war not that I'm wishing it. Knock on
No.
wood if we have it.
No war. No war.
But
Yeah.
how many times do you see when things happen in our countries and this and that, and there's just like 50,000 soldiers died, 10,000 soldiers died, 12 soldiers died.
Yeah.
Like no identity
No, not
whatsoever.
even specified as male.
Yeah.
30 workers died. 20 miners died.
Mm-hmm.
So many police officers died. So many soldiers died.
Mm-hmm.
So many construction workers died. You don't even specify that they're
And only
male.
a few war stories really get told out of all of them.
Yeah.
There are some, and you have to still find many of them.
Uh-huh. And you don't see them presented as a male form of victimization.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to look at male victimization. Yep. These are deep biases. There's another thing. Women tend to have a greater verbal and emotional agility. Here's a quote from Daphne Patai. The feeling of ineptness, of being no match for females at the verbal level, is the common inheritance of all but a few exceptional males. And that spawned a joke. That spawns a joke, which is great. I love this joke. It's brutal. If a man says something in the forest and there's no woman there to hear him, is he still wrong?
Is he still wrong? Is the forest female?
Yeah, right. Yeah. See?
Real question: is it a female tree?
Yeah.
Oh.
But that captures something of how it feels from a male perspective, like you never win an argument with a woman. Women always run rings around you and the male is always just baffled, And Bill Burr does some great stuff around that. He goes, I had won. I was winning. I had the logic on my side. I had it all. So how is it that I end up apologizing? How is it that I end up groveling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many times. Dude, still 3 loophole. Acting like I'm not also a woman. Like, I've had my times, but I've had those issues with my own mother so many times. We start on one argument about the bills, and somehow it ends with an argument and how my clothes aren't good enough, and I'm sitting here like, how did we get here?
Yeah, see, that's what men say. How did we get here? What? And number 10, the power of protection under chivalry.
Yeah.
Kind of self-evident.
I mean, that seems to be a natural thing. I mean, it's sort of taught.
I think
and
so
it's sort
too.
of naturally occurring.
I
It's sort of
agree.
both.
There's an instinctual element. And instinct is biology. Instinct is genetics.
Yeah.
Number 11, the power to shame.
That's not only a female to male, but that's a female to
Yeah,
female.
that's true.
Have you Females' biggest haters are other females,
Yeah.
not men.
Yeah. Yeah. Women shame women and women
And
shame
shame
men.
men.
And men are kind of set up that way because if a man's going to be the hero, if he's going to try to be the hero, he's going to fail because he's just a person. As Steve Martin said, see, a man is a guy, and that's the truth of it. He's just a guy.
Mhm.
And if he's going to try and be a superhero, he's going to fail and he's going to be shamed. And
Yeah, I'm not saying whether or not I'm a fan of Pearl, but like if you ever look at the comment section of any of her videos,
yeah,
I'm gonna tell you right now, there's a lot of them. A lot of the hate ones are like females, like you're being a track on, you're being this, you're being that. The women are the top people for female MMA content, saying that they're like track cons or pick me's or
yeah,
something. It's like, oh my god.
women shaming the men and women shaming the women.
And
There's a lot of power in
there's so
that.
many Reddit stories about women backstabbing each other all the time. It's crazy.
So this is a good example of how this power is kind of spread to women in general,
Mhm.
to a large extent, and it's all these things intertwine. So that it has to do with female moral authority too.
Yeah. Honestly, going back to an episode where we talked about sister real quick, brotherhood ends up not all times, but a lot of times ends up a lot healthier than what they call sisterhood. They're like,
Uh-huh.
we're a sisterhood, and then they turn around and she steals your boyfriend. And you're just
Yeah,
like, I thought we were a
I
sisterhood.
know,
It's
I
like
know.
sharing's caring or something. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, a lot of people have
It's like sisterhood to
talked
the
about that.
specific clique of like three girls, and even those three girls don't like each other.
Yeah, men. Oh God,
Has anybody watched Mean Girls? It's a perfect example of this.
there was a friend of mine that just his naive wisdom. He said, I never forgot. He said, you know, we men, we sometimes we kill each other, but otherwise we get along fine. Women, they can't be in the same room with each other. That's hilarious. And in that, from that sort of naive perspective on it, I thought
Yeah.
it was hilarious. But yeah, the power to shame. Here's a quote: "One of the most effective ways I've seen women using to gain power over men is by shaming men," says Chartosi, "using their tongues to put men down, to shame their sexuality, to shame their success." Yeah. So we talked about how, on the one hand, there's feminism, on the other hand, there's like nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want to anger the heroic efforts of the men's rights movement. And
Mm.
in some kind of official sense, there's feminism and then there's nothing.
Yeah.
And women's power to shame is part of that, the power that has men accepting that. It has men accepting this idea: man bad, the overempowered oppressor; woman good, the innocent victim. And causes men, rather than to rebel or object, mostly men just sort of hang their heads in shame. They've been shamed.
Yeah. I'd say feminism versus whatever is sort of, I don't know. I think of it like a castle, or like if anyone's a Star Wars fan, Darth Vader and the Imperial forces over here, and just the people of Tatooine. Small little houses, barely surviving, different factions,
Yeah.
people in their own lives. Giant unified force with stormtroopers. The unfortunate part, though, is they can't shoot their facts straights.
Uh-huh. No, they can't. Yeah, right. Feminism is like an ideological dictatorship. And
I feel terrible. I can't remember the name of it right now.
what?
What it's actually called, Darth Vader, because it's the rebels
Oh, the Empire.
and the Empire. Yeah, the Empire, Tatooine.
Yeah.
Some feminists are gonna kill me for that one.
Yeah. Number 12, the power of accusation, a lawsuit.
Hmm.
And this is, he sexually harassed me.
Yeah. And they believe it.
Accusations. Yeah. Accusations can be just deadly, you know, um, whether there's any evidence for it or not, even if the male is
Well, so
found
that
innocent.
numbers too. Women can come in numbers to accuse people, and they'll bring their girlfriends in or make up evidence and stuff. There's been a lot of stories of like
Uh-huh.
people photoshopping pictures or bringing their girlfriends and say, "Oh yeah, we saw him do it," even though they weren't even there.
Yeah.
They come in numbers in these
Sisterhood.
accusations. Yeah,
Sisterhood, you
the
see.
one-time sisterhood works.
Yeah. No, sisterhood it may not look so powerful from your perspective, but
I
you
think
see,
it's powerful, but it's very conflicted inside because
yeah,
they support each other and they backstab each other at the same
you
time.
know,
So it's a very confusing system.
yeah,
They'll all come together against one guy, and then once he's put away, they all go back to each other and they're just like dun 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 standoff
yeah,
on who's gonna make the first move against the other. It's like,
yeah, yeah. I just read an article about trashing, how women trash each other.
yeah.
It happens all the time. Let's see. Yeah, lawsuits. Well, yeah, that's like the threat of lawsuits, like
Hmm.
the threat of a pay gap lawsuit
Yeah.
will often cause a company to pay their female employees more
Hmm.
in order to avoid because these pay gap,
Yeah.
um,
Or just the threat of a lawsuit by a woman to please them. They're just like, oh, please don't sue me here.
yeah, academia power. Women really dominate the whole
Academia, yeah.
academia, yeah. And this is within academia that feminism is taught, which gets to the 14th and last form of female power, feminism itself.
Mm.
Um,
This united movement of we're all feminists.
yeah.
And they
Again,
are.
it's this illusion of solidarity,
Hmm.
but it's effective.
Hmm.
Whereas men are more like every man for himself. The brotherhood, so-called brotherhood, just leaves men to just twist in the wind so much. Well, good luck, buddy. You know. So,
And
uh,
brotherhood, feminism's interesting because it sort of took sisterhood, put it on a mass scale, and had them all unify together. Brotherhood seems, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I see brotherhood, and this is like my friends in fraternities, it's like they're brotherhoods with their group.
uh-huh.
And they are sort of
Yeah.
brothers with other
So
fraternities and
it's
other
like
groups,
Sigma
but it's like,
Chi brotherhood,
yeah.
but it's not sort of a brotherhood of men in general.
Yeah, like they'll be brothers and cordial with the other groups and they get along with them, but it's like it's their group and their people were prioritized and who they help first and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Uh-huh.
Like it's the people closest. That seems to be the thing. Like they don't seem to be able to mass do that. Now, guys can get together, a bunch of them, and happen to talk and get along, but they don't like unify. They're just sort of like,
Well, they
oh,
certainly don't mobilize on their own behalf as
no,
men. No. There is no masculist movement.
no.
There is no mobilization. You see,
At least not a very large one.
oh, right, it's weak. What we got is small.
Mhm.
And again, there's a lot of MRIs out there that'll be screaming, but come on. How many large scale, important reforms have have the men's movement achieved?
Mhm.
Really? See, if I was in charge, I would mobilize everything just on uh, making it mandatory that uh, every school system have recess period.
Mm.
Um, that would be an issue that the general public wouldn't really object to, have a problem with. You'd get a lot of people on your side with that.
Mm.
A lot of people are actually shocked. You mean recess is disappearing? What? And the significance of recess for boys is pretty self-evident. And if we mobilized and just caused that one thing to happen,
Mm.
we'd have at least that one success under our belt. And we could demonstrate, look, we can affect the culture. We can affect a change. And that might draw more men into the movement. But not as victims. We're never going to draw men in general because, look, you get to sit in victimhood center seat.
Yeah.
That's never going to draw men in general. What you're going to do to draw men in general is you're going to say, look, guys, gender politics, it's broken. Let's fix it. Now you're talking to men as men. Now you're using male language.
Mm-hmm.
That will call to men. And men will man up, I think, for that, as long as what we're trying to do is fair, even, balanced improvement all around, not just for men, but for women also, for society.
Mm-hmm.
That you could pull men into to do that, if you could get the word out
Yeah.
for that.
So like fix it and put an honor to it and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Honor, integrity,
Mm.
these kinds of things. These are the words that appeal to men.
Because I think
Victim
with
doesn't.
women, it's the recognition thing. Not all of feminism gets along. There's so many different kinds.
Yeah.
But by just, I've noticed a lot of them, by just saying, oh, I recognize your struggle, you're this and that. And they're just like, yes, thank you.
Uh-huh. Well,
Not that
that's
I think they always do the best with recognizing the struggle, if I'm going to be honest. I've told you the story once. There was this girl, and I was in what was it, diversity, inclusion, and something or
yeah,
another, like sort of theory class that I had to take as a required course.
right.
And there's a girl behind me. Usually there's a different girl that sits in front of her who happens also to be Hispanic, Mexican girl. I usually am in the other seat, but all the seats in that column were filled. So I sit in front of her, and literally the topic of the day was about privilege.
Uh-huh.
And we were supposed to have a I recognize my privilege talk. And
Uh-huh.
she, of course, started it. I was the only white person who was in our group because it was me, my friend Amadou, who's African, and then
Uh-huh.
the Native American guy who sits in front of us. And we're all sitting there. And she's like, I recognize my privilege. And literally, like 2 seconds later, after saying that statement, she was like, and I know you mentioned how hard is your family coming from Mexico. And I was staring at this girl like, what are you talking about? I'm not even Mexican.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were the other girl. I was like, so much for recognizing privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, you got about zilch out of that one.
I'm like, that happened and that backfired in the same 2 minutes.
Right,
But just
recognizing
the
your
the
privilege.
recognition
Well,
for a second seems to be such a power because they're like, somebody sees me.
yeah. Hmm. Okay, so I'm going to say one more thing about feminism, and that's been the power of what I call the glass escalators.
Yeah.
So that's like affirmative action. Yeah, that's right. So that's all feminism is, to break through that glass ceiling. Not trying to break through the glass floor, mind you,
Hmm.
but just the glass ceiling.
Yeah. For
And
those who are very imaginative, imagine that ladder suddenly became an escalator and there was an opening to that top floor.
that's right. And it would be the form of affirmative action, quotas,
Hmm.
in throughout schooling. It's Title IX.
Yeah.
It's female only grants.
Yeah.
Lots of it's 1,027 female centric organizations in the U.S.
Female-based scholarships isn't there a big
Yeah,
thing?
right. Even though many campuses look like giant sororities these days, to my knowledge, there's still more female scholarships than male.
Mm.
Um,
I would also say it depends what part of campus. At the business school, at least, there was still a big number of men, but
yeah, and the last time I looked at it was quite a while ago. It may have changed. I don't know.
yeah. But it depends on like what college you go to too, because business school and like the engineering school still are going to be very male
Yeah,
heavy. But
trade
like
schools. Yeah,
you got like the art school or fashion or the social work school. I swear, I think there was only 5 men in that
yeah,
entire school.
yep.
So,
Well, those are the 14 modes of female power that I came up with. And
and that's obviously not all of them, but that honestly covered a very good amount of them.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the list. That was. We should maybe post that in the description section.
Maybe so. That would be good. Well, there's oceans more to say about female power, but I think that closes Female Power
Covers us for
Volume 1.
yeah. So with that, thank you so much for listening to us. This has been the Glass Floor Podcast. Please subscribe below. Press the like button if you liked this.
Yes.
And we will see you next
Yes.
episode.
And special thanks to NCFM, the National Coalition for Men.
Our sponsors.
Yeah.
This is Katrina.
I'm Tim Goldich. Thanks
And
for
we will see
watching.
you.